Good morning, all. Happy Friday, and welcome to another episode of Tea and Coffee with Paula and
Jay.
Dun-dun-dun.
Good morning, everybody. How are you? Good morning to you.
Good morning to you. Hello.
morning to you.
Good morning.
Talk radio with Paula and Jay. I'm going to do that for our buddy who sent the message because he enjoys that. So nice to hear from people that watch the show. And got some updates for you. We got some information for you. And it's been a busy day going through what the cool kids call a bunch of receipts.
Yes.
So we'll get into that. And that's not the farm, this property. Why am I drawing my homestead?
Yeah.
Homestead. That's not our homestead update. Do we have a homestead update today?
No, I don't think so. You've done bupkis.
Wow. I did exactly what I told everybody I was going to do yesterday. I was going to get onto two very important calls. Those were long calls, lots of information, going through it all, because we are doing our darndest to full on this show
and accurate
and confirm and not speculate and not hype and not bandwagon.
Don't believe the hype. What? Don't believe the hype.
She's a sweetie, isn't she? I like this woman a lot. So we'll get into all of that, but the homestead stuff, I don't have anything else to add since yesterday.
Bupkis.
So all those that are sitting there going, what did they do to the homestead yesterday?
Bupkis.
That's the answer to that one. But yeah, we were busy. It's not that we weren't busy. We were busy catching up on other things. So I kind of want to get into that. Not a lot of it's posted on X right now because this is still the investigation stage. I'll start with the first call. I can't tell you who. Okay, it's a whistleblower. I can't tell you who. But I did end up posting something yesterday that needed to be deleted because some people felt that it was premature, even though it was accurate and fully truthful. That's probably why they were concerned about it. We don't want to interfere with ongoing investigations, and before final reports are out. So we're going to have to wait for that one because, our little old show really ruffled a lot of feathers in
Pun intended.
No, not that one. In a couple of police forces. We're not trying to interfere.
Of course.
There's a fine line between reporting and interfering. So if you caught the news yesterday and you read the post, it's accurate. It's very accurate. It's the first place that came out with that accurate. But we're going to now wait for the final report in the next few weeks, and we'll see where that goes now. Because, of course, there's some people out there that want to bury things and want to get rid of things and don't want it to be a problem. And they'll use literally every excuse they can to try and do that, including 11,000 people know. Because that's how many people saw the post. So anyways, stay tuned for that one. I'm being cryptic on purpose because I really do not want to interfere. I want to report. And the information came to us possibly prematurely. But the reporting on it was proper because it was provided and permission was granted to go ahead and release it. It just got quickly absorbed by the public and everybody involved. It was fully aware of it by the end of the day.
Okay.
So stay tuned for that one. It's coming back. It's going to be the same information because it was accurate, but we do not want to interfere. I think that's a fine line in journalism. You definitely want to be truthful, and truth can cause problems sometimes, and sometimes you need to let processes finish before you can do that. And no, this is not the ostriches. So if you have no idea what I'm talking about, I'm sorry, you missed a post. But this has to do with an investigation, Canada-wide one that's currently going on. So that's out of the way now. And one more thing, because I know that they're watching today. I do not release my sources. I never will. I am a journalist, and they know it's true, so they can't come after me for incorrect information. So they know there's information getting out. But we'll leave it there because a good journalist would make sure that you're trusted with your sources and your audience. We'll leave it there. The next conversation was around the ostriches, because that's all anybody's talking about now. There's a couple posts that I'll get into from yesterday about airspace, and wow, some people are just bonkers. Well, I'll get into that too. But when it comes to it, all I can really say at this stage is there's a group of us now who's going through all the receipts, as the cool kids call it. We do not want to speculate in any way, shape, or form.
Right.
Everything's going to be proven. Everything is, believe me, there's a lot of information out there already, including the website of the farm, the other business, a business in Quebec, liberal government, money from. There's a lot of stuff going on here that isn't being brought forward for whatever reasons. And I do expect the Supreme Court to disappoint everybody there, including all the people that are starting to show up there. There's a lot of people that are throwing their face over there, who, in their belief, they are doing the right thing, standing up. But again, we're going to bring the receipts. We're not going to be just replicating anything and supporting anything. This is why we're being very careful of what we support.
Sure.
But I can say that people in our locals, some of them are absolutely correct. It is an open air biolab, and there is a biohazard. So that is true. But we're going to break it down for you. The information goes back. The clinical studies go back to 2008. But the catalyst of this was SARS-CoV-1, which was the outbreak in Toronto and on the west coast of the US. Research that came from that led to the papers in 2008 that came to 2010. And there's a long line of information here that people don't seem to know, that's completely related. And it's not just industry related, it's them. Their names are on stuff. The people of the farm, they're enterprisers. They definitely were trying their best to create businesses that didn't succeed. So we'll get into that a lot. I know I'm being cryptic on that one too, because for the same reason why we're not going to continue with other reporting until the report's done. I want to make sure that all our receipts are in order, been validated, confirmed. We've got a team of people on it now. And it looks like we might be some of the first that are bringing this forward as a complete package. Not this Saturday, but next Saturday is our internal deadline to try and get this done delicately, properly. And we're absolutely going to upset a whole bunch of people, because this feels a lot like the Alberta fundraising, where a lot of people just simply won't believe it because they don't want to. They don't want to believe that, like Alberta fundraisers and a bunch of ladies who were out there supporting people that we cared about would.
Because they're being misled.
Yeah, misled or not the full story or whatever. And now keep in mind, there's nothing criminal. Okay,
don't tell me, tell them.
Just like the Alberta fundraising stuff, there's nothing criminal. It's just the full story.
Yeah,
it's the full story. There's more to this than that. So we'll get into that. And I do know that I'll still get some more backlash. I have been getting backlash every single day that I first don't report on it, because I was starting to look into it. And if you don't have something nice to say, maybe don't say anything at all, type of thing. Now we've really dug into it. There's a lot more information and documents. I finally got my hands on the legal side of things, gone through it, and it's not what it seems.
Yeah, I was literally about to say it's not as it seems.
Yeah, it's not as it seems. But there are other people out there that are, breaking it. Like it's not like we're going to be the one that introduces information. Others have been. They just been silenced or bullied or pressured as soon as they start hinting at it. So that's why I said the same thing as the Alberta fundraising. It's because there's a huge group that don't want to hear something that isn't in line with what they believe. And that's happening here again, for sure.
So what else? What can we talk about then? What's next?
Well, we'll bring it to you next Saturday. There's a group of people working on it, doctors and researchers. And look, it's all public information. The public just may not be pleased with it. And if it was government overreach and it was authoritative or something like that, or tyranny, or trying to set the stage for more things like this. These are 400 out of 8 million birds that go through this process in BC. There's a reason why avian flu is taken so seriously. It shouldn't be something that's allowed to spread, even if they're cute or loved. I didn't see a single person stand up for the chickens. Again, 8 million in BC went through this process already in order to stop the spread of this. And if you don't like the law, the right way to do it, get involved, become a lawmaker, and change it. But this isn't something that I think needs changing, to be frank with you. So again, we'll bring the receipts. There's nothing criminal. It's just there's more to this story that has my opinion on the side of, sorry, the Supreme Court's going to come down and lift that stay. I don't even think they're going to hear it. They're going to go through the same things that Robert Kennedy went through, the same thing Dr. Oz went through. After you look at the receipts, I'm not saying receipts as in something was purchased. I just mean this is the term of the evidence. You got to go through the evidence. The same reason why all of those people, including PETA, are not involved, is because this isn't a humanitarian or an animal rights thing at all. There's a lot more to it. All right, so let's move on. We'll leave that with everybody. Just know that after the calls, the information, the reading, the research, and a lot of it, that's what we want to do. We want to bring you the truth. And we're definitely expecting backlash. All right, so back to the news, to the ones who stuck around, because I know a good chunk of you, at least half of you in our locals, understands already. You guys are already probably chatting amongst yourselves. I know some of that information came out in our locals group. By the way, that might be a good time for you to go consider going there, because there is some frank conversations there. It's amongst people who are very aware and sharing. You go ahead and do that. And make sure that you stay civil. They always are. And stay tuned. Oh, in our locals group, one more thing that I do want to announce. Paula and I have been bouncing around the idea of extending the episodes to locals only.
Yeah.
So at 8 o'clock, we'll shut off, and then maybe 10 or 15 minutes.
Yeah, just for a little bit.
Well, for you.
Yeah.
And if I can continue further if need be, because I do want to bring more unfiltered information to them. Like right now, starting Monday, we'll do that. We'll jump into our local side of things for at least 15 minutes and just be more frank with you, because this is a powerful responsibility that we have, especially after the experiences yesterday with one of the stories. It really, really caught fire. People learned quickly, and it was all truthful, and that was kind of the problem. Some people did not want that truth. So locals, you'll be getting a little bit extra badge, Paula Jay or Jay and Paula. And starting Monday, we're going to get that tech in place. And all right, so the breaking news yesterday that I received. Now I understand this was kind of 3 days old, but the renewal of it happened yesterday, so it caught the attention of a lot of people. There is an air restriction put in place, a temporary restricted air zone. As a pilot, I'm familiar with these. They happen around quarries sometimes. They happen around sensitive buildings. Like if you fly around Ottawa, there are restricted zones there, which means you can't fly there. And then this is restricted zone initiated by the RCMP. So it's called the controlling agency. They're the ones that put the request in, and it is over top of the airspace of the farm, the Universal Ostrich Farm. It was put in place or renewed, from my understanding, at least yesterday, is good through October 6th. They probably will renew it again. The airspace, a temporary restricted airspace, is from the surface level up to 3,000 feet, and it's a 0.5, I think, 0.5 nautical, there we go, 0.5 nautical miles radius from the center. So that makes it 1 nautical mile total, from end to end.
Would this be inclusive of drones as well?
It is. So I'll read it to you. Pursuant to Section 5.1 of the Aeronautics Act, the airspace within radius 0.5 nautical mile center, and it gives the lat long. And then it gives a bit of a kind of a direction stuff by Arrow Lakes Hospital. There's a helipad, and it is restricted During police operations, no person shall operate an aircraft, including remotely piloted aircraft, RPA drone, a remotely piloted aircraft drone as a category, within the area described unless authorized by the controlling agency, RCMP, at, and here are the phone numbers. So these NOTAMs, and notice too, I think they changed it now. It used to be the airman, but I think it's air.
Person?
No, it's still an M. They kept the M.
I was messing with you.
Yeah, mission or member, or air member, something like that. They changed it because of that whole piece side of things. Which, but anyways, it's a NOTAM. We went through pilot school. You did too. So you understand how these are serious. This would include helicopters too. So that Rebel one that we saw flying around must have been over 3,000 feet.
Yeah.
Because that's where the airspace restriction ends, at 3,000 feet. And that could be explained why it looks so tiny for them, because a helicopter pilot would not have violated this.
Correct.
This would have been...
He knows his limits. He'd fly within it.
Or she. There you go. Look, he or she could have been flying. You don't
know.
No, it's not a they. I'm pretty sure.
No, look, there's an grammatically appropriate time to use the word they.
The pilot. How about the pilot would not have violated that airspace? So that could be why Rebel's coverage was so high up, because that airspace restriction was in place. But it does mean that someone like Jim Kerr, who's been flying a drone, might be facing at least a fine or confiscation or something, because people are confused. There's drone requirements of a certain weight where you require a pilot's license, a drone pilot license for it. And then if it's below that weight, you don't. But people then think, well, does that mean that these smaller drones are then allowed in these spaces? No, this is everything.
Yeah.
Everything that can fly, everything that can be man-propelled, including like airports. Airports have these restrictions too. And no, you can't just fly these little DJI drones in there at all. For various reasons. Now, why it's in place, a lot of people are saying, well, they don't want to be seen. That could be absolutely right. They also could be flying their own stuff, and they don't want anything to be run into. They don't want congestion up there. There's a whole bunch of reasons, and I'm not going to speculate on why they put it in place, but they did put it in place. What it isn't in place for, and this is where I think people get kooky sometimes, I've had at least half a dozen messages saying, why would they need an airspace restriction? Ostriches can't fly. This isn't for the bird. Okay.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, bless them.
Yes. Ostriches can't fly. So why do they... For starters, any bird that can fly doesn't respond and follow air restrictions.
It
Just to be clear,
too.
I've never seen a duck fly around an airport because there's an air restriction. Those are kind of the only exception. Okay, so no, this isn't because the birds may fly away and they can't. That's not the reason. This is it's going to be equipment that's in the air. The police may have their own helicopter, their own drones, etc. So I found it interesting that this was put in place, because this isn't really normal when it comes to the call process. Normally, when there's a call order, CFIA just comes in there and does the job.
Yeah.
They don't need the police. There's a lot of cooperation. If you're in the industry, you have the license, you fully understand why. It's a $2 billion poultry industry that's being protected here. And when, yes, there are international agreements in place to not spread avian flu via trade. So all these countries came together and said, look, this is how we're going to stop avian flu.
Yeah.
It's going to be detected, and then the whole herd is wiped out. Called
flock. Actually, no, I wonder, is it it would still be a flock.
A flock or herd. Yeah, you can use the term interchangeably. And over 8 million have been processed under this policy in BC alone. Across Canada, it's in the tens of millions. Alberta and Quebec currently have a couple outbreaks that are being dealt with. You guys don't know about it, but it's true. It's happening. And this is the process. Now, in order to protect the CFIA, in this particular case, they do need the RCMP assistance. They've been doxxed. Their names have been put out there. Their pictures have been put out there. The contractors have been harassed. I know people are passionate, but they've actually created a situation that isn't safe for the agency. And if, again, like I said, if you don't like the process or you don't like the law, doxing and harassing isn't the way to get it done.
Yeah.
So the RCMP are taking extra precautions on this one. If you want to fly a helicopter at 3,001 feet above the ground and use a telescopic camera and film, there's nothing stopping you. So go ahead and do that if that's a passion of yours. I don't think they're trying to hide anything. I think they're trying to stay safe because they're going to have their own equipment. So for that one, we're just going to move on. But you can see that Canada is very interested in this. There's a lot of traction on this post. And as far as our coverage is concerned, we're going to cover facts, things that change, like, oh, look, there's an airspace restriction. The Supreme Court, as that's moving through. And then, of course, when we've done collecting all of our findings, we'll be presenting those. But that's the extent of the coverage that we'll do. We're not going to go there. There's plenty of people there. If you want to follow that coverage, there's plenty of people that coverage. So go ahead. Rachel Thomas, who's an MP down in Lethbridge. I've reached out to her a few times to have her on the show. Her staff, it was funny. I said, okay, is she available? Because I want to talk to her about the Coots side of things.
Yeah.
She's a conservative MP. She's actually quite popular down in Lethbridge for being a conservative MP. Some of her work is really good. Like I support good work. So we reached out to her and said, hey, is she available on this day and time? And said, oh, terribly sorry. That particular date and time doesn't work for our schedule. I said, hey, no problem. You tell me when.
Yes.
And no response. So I'm trying to connect with her again. Again, I'm very supportive of the work she's doing. It doesn't matter that she's or anything like that. And here's what she's doing now, which is very good. And I'm glad that we're seeing more of this now. Here's her post. Canadian tax dollars are funding the anti-hate network's initiative to divide Canadians by attacking certain portions of our population, and the Liberals call it journalism. Minister Guilbeault, is that close? Guilbeault? Stephen Guilbeault?
Yeah.
Doesn't even know where his department's money is going. I've called on him to revoke this funding. The question is, will he take action? Rachel, thank you very much. This is 100% true. I've responded and said, yes, they are. Keep it up, Rachel Thomas. Keep digging. Take a very close look at Barbara Perry, too.
Yeah.
It doesn't stop at Anti-Hate Network, but I'm glad that more people are starting to see this. I think Trump's designation of Antifa is probably what's gotten people to pay a little bit more attention to what's going on, because this is an international group. Canada Anti-Hate Network is Canada's version of several groups internationally that are convincing governments that they are the true source of designation of hate, and been pushing bills and change, and it's just simply not true. Like,
right.
It's simply not true. So thank you to Rachel, and hopefully more of the CPC for digging into this, becoming loud on it. And I'm sure she's going to be getting a Canada Anti-Hate Network webpage soon. A lot of us have. A lot of us get a little expose done by them. So hopefully this keeps going. Here's why I made that comment earlier about the Canadians are really on top of the ostriches, but they're not on top of the burning of churches.
Yeah.
So as you can see with the reach on this one, nobody seems to care that yet another church burnt down. Okay, here in Alberta, we're into the several hundreds Canada-wide now. So Alberta church burned to the ground, 2 Aboriginal suspects charged after dangerous RCMP chase. All Saints Ukrainian Orthodox Church here in Alberta burnt down. So we got another one. And this seems to be a very frequent thing. This is stemming from the pain and suffering and anger around the residential schools. Regardless of what side you're on, this isn't the way to deal with it.
No, how would burning a place of worship, of anyone's worship, impact in a positive way your cause?
Correct.
Yeah, it wouldn't.
And in a country where they're talking about hate speech putting you away, this is surprising that it's happening. But so my comment was, but hey, let's try and stamp out hate speech. Where's the law that makes burning down churches, mosques, synagogues, or any place of worship an expression of hate and punishable up to life in prison? Right, liberals don't care about religion. They only support their cults. And look, if you're going to start putting people away, for hate speech, which is something they say. What about hate actions? Like you burning down a church wasn't because you had extra matches and you thought it'd be fun. You burning it down because you're trying to destroy it. But Canada doesn't seem to care about this. Unless ostriches are attached to it, their attention is not on this kind of stuff right now, and that's sad because this was reported yesterday. 2 people in custody after a police chase or CMP police chase, and I do definitely want to bring this forward because this is something that the mainstream was not talking about. It's people like the Western Standard and Corey Morgan and the rest of the group there that are. Unfortunately, this isn't getting the attention it needs, and
just a little segue back into that. So we got 2 comments here from Facebook. Jim for flying his drone. Jim did not get a fine, and then someone said Jim got a warning.
Okay, I don't
Yeah,
care. This is the kind of pushback we don't care about. Jim's violating airspace. They took his ID, and whatever comes of it, comes of it. And you can get your fines later, and you got a warning. Okay, so don't do it anymore. I'm getting frustrated with the group who just cares about what they want to care about and not the law on this particular issue. And they want to push on us for it. So, sure, okay, but Jim can also get mailed a fine later. Transport Canada does do that. But in either case, he was apparently violating that airspace, and he had us spoken to. I think it was yesterday that the RCMP spoke to him. So we'll leave it at that. That's not the story here. The story here is you guys are being tricked. We'll get into that in the coming days. All right, so the FBI Director James Comey has been indicted by a grand jury on 2 charges: obstruction of justice and making false statements. Is this the start of something big? One of the reasons why I think New Alberta should have grand juries, it's one way to police the police. Because without grand juries making the decision to bring the charges, sometimes charges don't happen. And at least in Canada, it's left with the police or the Crown. Public has nothing to say about this. So I would like to see a New Alberta have a process where the public through grand juries can lay charges. And also I think it would be a good thing for justice to have grand juries, because people like the Carbert and Olenek and stuff like that, they would not have been denied bail. They likely would have had charges, but they would also have been able to get bail because the evidence had to be presented and there was no evidence that they were dangerous. So in situations like that, I think it would have been good. And then also in other situations where bail should be denied, violent offenders, this happened all over the country. I think that a grand jury wouldn't allow them out. But I think it would be a good thing for justice. So good thing that this is happening, and we dig into this a little bit more here. It took 5 years for an indictment of James Comey. Basically, he's facing criminal charges for lying to the Senate about leaking information to the press. Does anyone have eyes on Anthony Fauci? His time is coming, because he sat in front of the Senate and the House as well and lied through his teeth about function research and his involvement and effectiveness and all that kind of stuff. But it did take a long time. It took 5 years for Comey's indictment to happen, but maybe there will be a lot more coming out. I think it's good. Justice should prevail here, innocent until proven guilty. The burden's on the state to go ahead and prove him guilty, but this is one of the first steps to that.
I saw a post online regarding this subject. It says Trump continues his retribution.
Sure, whatever.
And I was like, really?
It's going to be an open court, and Trump went through a lot of indictments and charges and convictions.
Correct.
And stuff. So I'm not sure why they suddenly don't want the process to happen when it's not their guy.
Correct.
Correct. It's whatever. I'm done with the double standards. Shadow of Ezra, which is a great little account. Follow it. Shadow of Ezra on X. President Trump confirms George Soros and Epstein Island visitor Reid Hoffman are under investigation for financing radical left-wing terrorists, groups like Antifa. Trump says numerous wealthy elites aligned with left-wing causes are secretly funding these groups. Trump tells the media, you will find out. I 100% believe in this. George Soros, since at least 2015 or so, has been on my radar. He's been funding a lot of things privately and in various ways. So good. I'm glad that they're looking into this. My post here, not a surprise. I bet they will learn what many of us know. Soros was behind the George Floyd BLM riots. Someone paid for the pallets of bricks that were mysteriously placed in cities all over the U.S. The Canadian Anti-Hate Network must be worried. The Antifa ties are here too. I'm getting information from inside that, yes, they are worried. And Antifa is considering backing down for a bit, thinking it's all going to blow over or something like that. We'll see. We'll see. But at the end of the day, you're going to find people were saying Antifa's not real. Who's the leader? Who's the funder? This guy. So you're going to find out that George Soros is at the top of the destabilizing of the West initiative, which means UK, US, France, Germany, Canada.
Oh, the UK is lost.
Because of funding and initiatives by this guy. Now, why does he want to destabilize the West? Let's ask him. Let's ask him. We're not going to speculate on that one, but we're going to get some more investigation done, and I'm glad about that. Okay, so our guest is going to be Vlad Tepes today. Yep. He hasn't popped in yet. And then, of course, I'm still running for office.
Yeah, you show off your new signs.
Okay. So here are the road signs that we're putting together, the lawn signs. Stop Edmonton interference. Vote Jason Levine for Brazeau Strong, because the political arm of the provincial government does meddle into municipal affairs. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not so good. So definitely we'll have a lot of strength there. And because of our existing relationships and connections and work in this area, I think I definitely would be a good voice for that. Stop Councillor Profiting. Vote Jason Levine for honest leadership. We certainly can get into this one day, but it's well known all over the place. There's times where reeves and mayors and councillors and that kind of stuff will have projects that improve their business or property values in one way, shape, or form, whether they become a subcontractor or improvements in very near or at their property. This should be happening. It should be residents first, and the priority should be what's needed, not who needs it when it comes to councillors' decision. So we'll be doing that, and this is a problem in Brazeau County historically. So we'll be addressing that over the campaign.
Yep.
8 years, no change. Vote Jason Levine for real change. So my two opponents are the two incumbents.
Yep.
The current and the previous one. So basically, they showed already what they can do. And if you live here for the last 8 years, you fully understand that a lot more work needs. So time for some change. That would be my motto there. And then where did your money go? Vote Jason Levine for accountability. There's a lot of ways that we could show where the money is spent. We can use it online. We can use reporting and auditing and transparency. Some of this isn't done right now. There's budgets that are provided and audits that are done annually, but it doesn't show who else was bidding. Why didn't we use them? What were the real costs? Well, there's the initial cost, but then what's the maintenance cost? Did the budget or the project get bloated? Some of this information people want to know because it's their money. So let me just go and check up on Vlad, because he did confirm last night that he is going to be joining us. And if he isn't, we can continue.
Yeah, we keep talking on.
But let's go ahead and we just do this button.
There you go. So some of the comments here. Yeah, so of course, George Soros is over everything. Money talks, it seems. Yeah, sure. We're living in a world where I think we've been realizing for a while now the influence many people have, and organizations, even people in the shadows. For sure, I would say that we're discovering that, and yes, they do have money and power funding them and keeping them around. Let's see what's here. Yeah, Darlene, again, agree. It's unbelievable that people aren't concerned about the churches. Why? Because religion isn't cool anymore. I'll admit, even when you're growing up as a youth, you're like, oh, I'm not sure about religion. But then as you grow older and you realize how important it is to have those core values in your life, and we bring it back and we try to then expose our children to it, that the next generation below. But it does seem that step is now being lost with regards to passing the importance down of of religion, keeping it evolved within the family, so that these youths, and as they grow, on keeping those values, and then they'd realize, why would I want to destroy a house of worship for someone? How is that truly going to impact me and my cause? And what would be the purpose and what would be the value to me, other than is it a satisfaction that someone's property is being destroyed? I don't get.
No, it's pain, retaliation. It's what else can we do? It's let's let our. I understand why. It's just not right.
Yeah.
I don't think it's right. It's not the right path forward. Continue to do what you're doing now, which is to make it public, bring it forward, have commissions, provide evidence, tell stories, don't let it go away. That's the proper way forward on this one. Because unfortunately, there's definitely going to be 2 young men or men, Indigenous men, who are going to now be facing a criminal court over this.
Yeah.
And that's not going to be a benefit to their life. But that's sad. The whole thing's sad. The churches can be rebuilt too, but other lives are being impacted. It's unnecessary.
Yeah.
Vlad's here, and he's in that wonderful home with the piano.
They shares with Pat King, and
yeah, a lot of people have that same piano. Vlad, your mic is muted on your end, but we can go ahead and get into this because Vlad is somebody who lives in Ottawa. He's been covering things a lot. He's been on the show several times because he's a journalist, and he gets into information. How we crossed paths again recently was around my post about Proud Boys and Antifa, and Proud Boys have been designated as a terrorist organization here in Canada, and I really believe, just like a lot of other things, if you look into it, you're going to find out it's not what people say. But Antifa so far hasn't been. So my comment was, the U.S. designated Proud Boys as a terrorist organization. Canada followed suit. Antifa's now been designated as a terrorist organization, but Canada isn't following suit. And why? The quick reason is Proud Boys would be anti-Antifa. They would be the ones that would assist in those kind of situations because they're more protectors than they are instigators. But let's get Vlad on this one because he's been following and researching this one for quite some time. Hey, good morning, Vlad. Nice to see you, bud.
Good morning. Thanks for bringing me on and discussing this. I got to say, it's been burning a hole in me for a long time. So I want to bring people back well before freaking COVID. Like, maybe we're talking maybe 6-7 years BC here, right? And I used to go with groups of like middle-aged, middle class, not necessarily that healthy, some yes, women who were protesting. One of them in particular was an escapee from behind the Iron Curtain, from the Czechoslovakia. And she would arrange protests for freedom of speech on Parliament Hill. This is like even possibly before Trudeau and then during the early years of Trudeau. And we would show up, and sometimes there'd be groups of maybe 20 and sometimes maybe 100, 150 people. And Antifa would show up, and I would say between 75 and maybe 600-700 Antifa. They would sometimes bust them in from Montreal. And Canadians may want to know that Montreal Antifa is a different animal than Ottawa Antifa, or certainly was then. I don't know what the story is now. So, but Montreal Antifa were trained by experienced militants, let's say, right? From a particular part of the Middle East that's very controversial. So, but just achieved statehood. So the Proud Boys formed around then, which were like really regular guys. I have video, I have interviews. I think I even sent you the links. They were like these regular guys who thought there's something wrong going on here. The left is out of control. They're attacking these very nice people that are just asking for their basic constitutional rights as we've always understood them in any kind of republic-like state. And they would protect us from raging Antifa, from the, they were the hostility, both in the terms of the vocals and the screaming and the megaphones, but also physical threats or threatening us and or approaching us physically, and intimidation. And they would also like try to follow us to our cars to find out what our license plate were, to know who we were. Like, Antifa's, of course, and now we're discovering Antifa is being funded by the Canadian Anti-Hate Network, which is being funded by the government. But that's today's news. So the Proud Boys were like these great guys, and they would follow us to our cars and make sure we weren't being followed and harassed. And they were like bodyguards, and they were
a buffer, really.
They were a buffer. And when I heard that the government of Canada had unanimously, that's every conservative, voted to declare the Proud Boys a terrorist entity and not Antifa, is when I began to really wonder about the Conservative Party of Canada. Like, this is where, I'm sure you've heard of Hanlon's razor. It's something that I hear way too often. Don't attribute to malice what can be accounted for by incompetence. I'm sorry, that's not incompetence. Unanimously, they voted to make the Proud Boys a terrorist entity. They were literally the nicest guys in Canada. They were absolutely, and now and again, I've been to other protests since where I'm standing in the middle of a huge crowd of very hostile leftists and or Muslim agitators, and I'll get a tap on the shoulder, and somebody will say, I don't know if you remember me, but I used to be with this group. Would you like me to watch your six? Thank you very much. These are like, and the fact that these people are declared a terrorist entity, Antifa isn't. This should be added to people's list of the Conservative Party voted for Bill C-4 for that parents would be criminalized. Correct. If they interfered with the mutilation and sterilization of their young children. Should be added to, I haven't got the list in front of me, but there's an awful lot of things that conservatives voted unanimously for, which make me very, very suspicious about building houses instead of deporting illegals. I mean, like, what? Right? Anyway.
I just want to jump into a little bit of the background of the Proud Boys and their designation. So from the January 6th thing, where they said it was an insurrection or whatever of the Capitol, the Proud Boys was a group who were outside. I don't believe they actually entered, but that's where the Biden administration really came down on them, and then they designated them as a terrorist organization. Then Canada followed suit, and you're correct. It was unanimous. Your understanding, was any Proud Boy ever arrested and charged and convicted in any way, shape, or form of having any criminal activity in Canada?
So, here's an ambiguous answer. I'm not aware that happened. I am aware that there were kerfuffles between Antifa and far left-wing violent radical groups and the Proud Boys subsequently in streets of Ottawa and in some shopping mall in Toronto. There were kerfuffles, and there's all kinds of, for people who want to do the digging, they can do the digging and find out. But in no way, shape, or form does it justify that legislation, and certainly not one-sided legislation against the Proud Boys. And the guys that we interviewed, there was a guy who made a movie, which is, I'll send you a link to it. I've uploaded it for free to anybody who wants to watch it. It was made by a Danish-American filmmaker called Killing Canada. Okay. Mm-hmm. And in it, he has all kinds of scenes where he's actually confronting large groups of Antifa on Parliament Hill. And he goes to the home of some of the Proud Boys and does a lengthy interview with them. And, you're going to get a very real sense of exactly who these two groups are from watching the film Killing Canada. You can find it on Rumble. And, in a minute, I'll dig up the link and I'll put it here in the studio chat. Yeah.
Yeah. And you sent me the Killing Europe one as well. Plus the fallout of when they tried to show that film in Ottawa. So I did check them out. And I was kind of blown away. Like, why is it that they couldn't show? Well, we know, okay, but they were exposing immigrants coming into Europe, destroying the communities, going after the women in the most violent ways possible, and it was becoming a major epidemic, and they were exposing that, and that was then called racist by certain groups, can't be shown, and then that actually got support by the library and MPPs and the city staff, and they shut down the film. And I even remember one of the comments was, well, why? Because the guy went into one of the offices and they didn't really realize that he was the filmmaker. And he's like, well, why is this being shut down? And they're like, oh, it's coming from the top. We got to push on this. And there's no actual reason. It's just, we don't want it to be out there. And I think that was part of what the library's decision was ultimately.
So let me just refresh on that one. So what happened was the filmmaker, Michael Hansen, he went to the office of the city councilor who was leading the charge, and he also was head of the library board, right? I forget his name right now, but it's one of those ironic names where you wonder,
Mr. Free Speech type of thing,
or Mr. Anti-Free Speech or something. But anyway, so he had an office at some arena in the east end of Ottawa, and so Hansen went there, and with another guy who was filming from behind. and asked, so what about this film? Oh yeah, we're going to get it shut down. So, and that was his personal secretary talking in his office in this arena. Why? Well, yeah, we got to get that shut down. What's the reason for that? Well, it's people. We don't want people to see that. You got to see the scene in the film. It's in Killing Canada, and yeah, that was about the shutting down. Now that film, by the way, Killing Europe, had been approved by the library, by the police. It met all the standards for showing a film, right? And so it was canceled a day or two before by leftist agitators. There's another guy I won't name because everybody who names him gets sued. He's like...
yeah, I know who you're talking about. The former lawyer at the Human Rights Commission and blah, blah, blah. That guy.
Yeah, it's like Bloody Mary. You say his name 3 times and you're in court. You know what I mean?
We'll stay away from that one because it's very litigious.
But he was working with this particular city councilor to shut down the film. And, that's when it started to become really obvious that Canada was not a republic like polity anymore, that it was that events had an outcome that was political and not truth-based. It was about the planned outcome of all things were to consistently be destructive to Canadian values and liberties and to move everything perpetually to the left. And that's what's happened.
Well, let's zoom out a little bit because one of the reasons why we first brought you on our show was Marxist dialectics. You taught us everything around that. We learned a lot around that. But when they do things like shut down Proud Boys but allow Antifa and even in a roundabout way fund it, are we seeing that in action here? And what about this announcement from Trump yesterday that they're going to be taking a closer look at George Soros, finally, and maybe find some things there?
Okay, so to begin with, the word dialectics is a huge, huge word, okay? And the only reason it's very annoying to people, including me, but the reason that I like to keep drilling down on that is because of something Major Stephen Coughlin, a retired U.S. military intelligence officer, said. He said, you can know everything there is to know about Marxism and nothing about dialectics, and we will lose. And you can know everything there is to know about dialectics and nothing about Marxism, and we may win, or we will win. And the reason is because dialectics is the actual tactical and strategic methodology of the left. It is the epistemology of the left. Leftism means the application of dialectics. And it takes time to get this because it is so counterintuitive to those of us who are raised in a Socratic system where we look at the evidence starting from a position of, I don't know what's true. That's what you do as a journalist. That's what all of us try to do. I don't know about the Austrians. I really don't. I'm being serious. I'm not giving an example. I'm not sure what's actually true about that. It would take me a lot of time and effort to figure out what's actually going on there. So I would go in there, hopefully open-minded, and look at all the evidence and come up with an opinion. But dialectics is where you say, okay, this is where things must land. We want a destructive force in Canada. So several destructive forces. So we're going to launch mass line narrative attacks. Islam is a religion of peace. You can read the Quran and know perfectly well on any single page that that's not the case. The vaccines are safe and effective. Well, I don't think I need to say more about that. I could,
we can now on YouTube finally.
You can now on YouTube. But the fact that you couldn't is actually proving my point. So,
yep.
So the reason I talk about dialectics is because it is the name of the overarching strategy to form and shape opinions and narratives as weapons against all aspects of our identity, even sexual. Like the trans thing is attacking our most fundamental notions. Like if you were to come up with the most insane lie you could think of, it would be, well, if a man suddenly, is a bearded, large, muscular man of 45, suddenly were to suddenly just declare himself a woman, that he is one, and you have to believe he is, and that he's a real woman, would be an astonishing lie that the government tries to force you to believe. So there's just a great example of dialectics, right? And so now how it applies, you sort of jumped into I don't know if I answered your question specifically because I don't think I remember your question specifically.
The Trump-Soros connection now.
Well, that's okay. So I see that a little differently. Trump's first term, he appeared not to do much, but behind the scenes, he was replacing every judge he could with one that was constitutionally minded, as opposed to one that had been installed by a literally communist think tank. And for anybody, look, if anybody thinks I'm exaggerating here, go to YouTube, look for a book called School of Darkness, it's an audiobook. I mean, you get the real book if you're still able to read a real book, but I like audiobooks personally. So it's about a 7-hour listen. It's by a woman named Bella Dodd, who is one of the most important central communist activists in the United States in like the 40s and 50s, right? And she had an epiphany. She became an American patriot, and she became a Christian. Okay, but for 20 years she worked to subvert and destroy the United States through dialectical attacks on institutions like unions and school and so on, schools, teachers, and so on. So if you listen to that book, you're going to get a really, really clear idea about how the communists subverted American and Canadian institutions in order to create the now dialectically driven society we have. Okay, back to the point. So what Trump did, he appears to have replaced and installed a whole bunch of judges that actually operate off the American Constitution. And now we see how incredibly important that was. There would literally have been no point in him taking on Antifa, BLM, other communist subversive groups when the entire judicial system had been subverted, because we're already seeing catch and release, even still, of tons of real criminals and murderers and rapists and people who are either working in ways that advance the communist revolution or consciously working to advance it. So I think what we're seeing now is Trump may feel that the United States' infrastructure, legal infrastructure, has been repaired to the point where he can take this stuff on and actually be effective. So, what time will tell, right? So, but I'm very glad that he is naming Antifa a terrorist group. It freaking is. And if you're looking for another example of dialectics, the fact that it calls itself anti-fascist, and you look at its supporters and they always say the same thing. Well, if you're against Antifa, is against fascism. So if you're against Antifa, you're for fascism. It's really astonishingly facile piece of logical sophistry, right? Obviously, they call themselves Antifa, but they're not anti-fascist. What they did is laser painted the middle, like Charlie Kirk, and called them fascists in order when I say laser, people may not remember this. This was the 1990s weapon system.
You put a laser on a target and the bomb hits it.
Right. So, asset A shines the laser on a target B, and then C or D or anywhere through Z would see the laser and then attack that target. Right. And that's how I see, excuse me, that's how I see this leftist laser painting of all people in the center. Anybody who's a constitutional conservative that actually believes in individual rights instead of collectivism and the dissolution of Western civilization, we're all called fascists and Nazis and so on. That's just laser painting us. It's laser painting us so that one of them. On that
for a second, Vlad. So last week we had, just hold on a second there. Last week we had Chet Chisholm on the show, and he was taking us through the inscriptions on the bullets for the alleged shooter for Charlie Kirk, and one of them was a game code, and that game code did exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
You type in the code, you target somebody or an enemy, you put a target on them, and then the Air Force will come and drop bombs on it. So laser targeting, like what you're saying right now, is what that game code did that was on the alleged shooter's casing. We had that last week.
I didn't know that. I am thrilled to know that. But I'm going to say CBC, CTV, and Global, that's what they're still doing. They're laser painting people like, very ordinary, regular Canadians that believe in a classical Canada, believe in the existence of the nation state and in individual rights and limited government. And they're laser painting us as fascists and et cetera, in order that and then, of course, when one of their assets does something, whether it's legal or political or if it's violent attack, they come up with a narrative that makes it look like the person who was attacked was guilty for their own attack.
Right, like you deserved it almost. And if you call somebody a Nazi and you believe they're a Nazi, then you're righteous for taking them out. And we get this too. Okay, so now that we're pushing this, hey, let's look into Antifa, let's call them a terrorist organization. I'm getting this like crazy now. Yeah. You're just a fascist and you support fascists. So here we go. Like I've been a racist, a transphobe, now fascist, anti-Indian, anti-Khalistani. Like we get all of these kind of terms now.
Get your bingo card out. Get all the names done.
But what I do want to do is kind of rewind a little bit on Antifa itself. So people say it's not an organization. There is no funding. There's just an ideology or it's just a movement. What's your position on that?
Well, I mean, you could, first of all, with the left, the point is never the point. The revolution's always the point, right? So I'll argue it for sport, but the truth is that those kinds of arguments need to be ignored because they're meant to take you away from the point. But obviously, you could say the same thing about the Nazis. You could say the same thing about any group whatsoever. I mean, the Antifa is a very, very well organized group. They are funded both by, in fact, I've got video of the German government itself. This is from, I don't know how long ago, 6, 7 years ago. The German Green Party stood up in the Bundestag and said, yeah, the Antifa is not being funded well enough, and we want to see a lot more funding directly going to Antifa. So the German government funds it. Pretty sure the Canadian government funds it. But now we know that the Canadian government funds the Canadian Anti-Hate Network, and new information indicates that they may be funding Antifa. There's the he who shall be not, we shall not name, has strong connections to Antifa. Antifa has a uniform. They have insignias. The flag. Actually, even under the Geneva Convention, I think it's legit to attack those guys, right? I mean, because they have an insignia, they have a uniform, and and technically they're terrorists because they attack soft targets for political outcome. So if they're not an organization, then no one is. Certainly, Al Qaeda is an ideology, and Muslim Brotherhood's an ideology, and the Islamic states. These are, it's kind of like I don't even like arguing that it is or isn't an organization. The question is how they operate, what their tactics are, and what their strategies are. That's what actually matters. And they took their name. See, okay, so I'm actually going to take an extra minute for this, there, if I may. So, if you look at Germany, the early days of the Nazis, right? Nazis had their brown shirts, which were their street thugs, and the communists, the Soviet communists, people who supported international communism, had their street thugs, which were called Antifa. Okay, now those two groups were practically identical. They're all collectivists. They were all central planning. They were all authoritarian. They all believed in an all-powerful state. Essentially, all of their thinking was Marxist, and they were battling for control on the streets to see who would win. But what the two groups, they were so similar that from an outside perspective like ours, you wouldn't necessarily know them apart ideologically, right? Except for maybe the Nazis believed in some private ownership of the means of production, but the means of production would still be used according to central planning from the state. They just felt that private ownership might be more efficient. But it's same thing, right? But both groups really hated classical liberals. So, right, or libertarians, let's say, right, to avoid any kind of arguments later on. So both groups hated people that believed in individual rights and in a republic-like state. And so once the street battles were settled, of course, there was a night of the long knives. Hitler killed the brown shirts, replaced them with the black shirts, and the Antifa people dropped their black clothing for communists and put on the black clothing of the SS, and the whole thing was settled, and they became. So I mean, their use of the word anti-fascist is out of context. And if anybody wants detail on this, if you're questioning it, there's a book called Postmodernism Explained, or Explaining Postmodernism, by a guy named Stephen Hicks. That's with a V, Stephen, S-T-E-V-E-N, Hicks, H-I-C-K-S. And he's a professor of, I think, history, philosophy. And the reason, and I think it's chapter 4, chapter 5, that deals with the actual history of Antifa and of the Nazi movement. And the reason I like to point at that book is because in the early days of Jordan Peterson, where he relied on his own authority, he would say to anybody who would listen, get the book, Postmodernism Explained by Stephen Hicks, listen or watch it. Actually, that book's also available free on YouTube as a complete audiobook. Listen to or read that book, and it will explain to you why. If you look at the political spectrum of Germany at the time, it was a very, very, very narrow triangle with like a republic type ideals up here, and you have Antifa, and you have the Nazis that are practically touching, but they fought to control, and then they both turned against people like us.
Now, my last question for you, because we're now out of time, but I definitely want to get this one out, is if Antifa was truly anti-fascist, what bigger opportunity than a ruling government taking away free speech and guns and all this stuff to go ahead and protest against? Shouldn't they, if they were truly anti-fascist, be focused on the current liberal government and what they're doing here?
So again, the name anti-fascist is dialectical in nature. It's like safe and effective. It's meant to give them a kind of a semantic advantage. Right? If you look carefully at all of their actions, they have always been on the most destructive side, which is communist thought right down to the ground, right? They've been on the side of forcing people to take the vaccines, right? They have been opposed to anybody. They were way opposed to the Freedom Convoy. They've pushed every narrative that probably behind church burnings, I don't know, but Antifa has absolutely been publicly on the side of whatever the most destructive thing to Western civilization is. So, like, I think you have to stop thinking about them in terms of their own set of parameters that they say by their name. You look at their actions, and it's always about the most destructive line of operation, LOO, that they can think of. Right? Whatever debate, whatever issue, with the left, the point is never the point. The revolution is always the point. That it's a clever little expression, but if you take the time to think about it, it's deeply profound, because you'll see even with the abortion debate, with any debate, the left takes the position which will be the most destructive to the West, irrespective of the issue itself. And that's what Antifa does.
Yeah, we've seen recently Carney himself come out and say, you guys are going to get poor, some people are going to suffer, we're going to lose some people, but it's for the greater good.
Yeah.
We'll get there too. So there you go, another example of that. And what I was getting to the example, though, was not the group itself, Antifa. I just meant if you were, using the actual word fascism and you wanted to be counter-fascism, you would definitely be looking at the Canadian government as, head in that direction, and you may be taking a stand against it. That's kind of where I was going with that question.
Well, okay. So if fascism is defined as the complete destruction of individualism, individual rights, and individual identity, and that the state forms a godlike state with corporations in order to where they use each other to accelerate each other's power and authority and wealth over the individual, then the Carney government, I would have to say, pretty much is bullseye for fascism.
Yeah,
but,
why would
that was also
talk about it, by the way, Bill C9.
Yeah. So there's an awful lot of it. Do you know what, the bills that Trudeau all passed struck me as having Carney's stamp on it. I don't think Trudeau actually had he was kind of a hedonistic party boy. He kind of didn't really have the philosophical depth to come up with some of the wording. I noticed that, since Carney took over, how little has changed indicates to me who the architect was behind a lot of these bills, like C4 and so on and so on.
Agreed.
100% agree. Yeah, we were keeping an eye on Carney before anybody really knew who he was. We saw his fingerprints everywhere. He was all over the convoy and the freezing of bank accounts and the violent response from the government. His fingerprints were all over that. And this is why it was very easy to say he's going to become our next PM after Trudeau resigns. And this was before anybody even thought Trudeau would resign. But absolutely. So we are out of time, Vlad. Thanks a lot for coming down, talking to us about the history of the Proud Boys, your direct experience with it, and also on Antifa as well, reminding us what Marxist dialectic is and how they use words to go ahead and attack us. And it's not even about trying to, address concerns. It's literally destruction of the West. So thanks for reminding us about all that. Any final comments from you?
If you would, please post the links to those two films, Killing Europe and Killing Canada. I think they're really, really worth watching, and Killing Canada maybe in particular at this time because it was made very early days of Trudeau or before, and it's prescient, right? It really explains a lot of what's going on now. Okay.
Thank you very much. Yeah, we'll post that. In that video, he's physically attacked. We're having conversations in the street. So yeah, we'll post that. Thanks for sharing those links. I did listen to them on my drive, and I will make sure the public or our audience has access to that. Yeah. Thanks, Vlad.
Have a great weekend.
You too.
Bye. There we go. Okay, so the crash course on Marxist dialectics is why we like to bring it back every once in a while to remind us what's going on. And listen, if you go back to our previous shows with him and pay attention to it, you'll be like, holy smokes, he's a fortune teller. Like, he knows what's coming.
And we've had him on for more than half an hour, and we've had good long episodes with him. So wealth of information. You can find us all on our Rumble. Won't be on YouTube, but it'll be on our Rumble, the Levine Show channel. You'll be able to go through there and find Vlad's episodes. I wanted to add, there's a comment here. So, morning, David. Thanks for saying you're going to watch the replay, but Antifa are the real fascists who accuse the real anti-fascists of being fascists, by Dinesh D'Souza.
Yep, that's 100%. This is very clear. You just have to pay attention, pick up a dictionary, understand what the words mean, and you'll see it. And they absolutely do this all the time. Safe and effective was actually dangerous and destructive. And yeah.
Yeah, because words do have meaning, even if they try to redefine the definition of the words later on. But words do have meaning. So exactly, yeah. When you're calling someone fascist or a Nazi or whatever, what is the true meaning of that word, and are you applying it correctly? And most likely no.
Yep, and then when you call a journalist a Fed in order to diminish their reach, that you're doing the same thing there. But anyways, folks, thank you very much for your time today.
Yeah, everyone have a fantastic weekend. Thanks for joining us. Really appreciate it. And yeah, we'll see you Monday.
And remember, Monday for our locals audience, there'll be extra. We're going to keep going on that now. Love you all very much, and God bless.